Welcome back, That Blow podcast is here. Subscribe and hit the bell, listen to the audio version on Spotify and Apple Podcast, and follow on Instagram, Facebook and TikTok the page That Blow Podcast. The new chapter of Dimmu Borgir has arrived. Grand Serpent Rising seems to truly live up to expectations this time, with the participation of Bratislava Symphony Orchestra and recorded partly in Bratislava itself. Dimmu proved they don't hold back when it comes to musical innovations. 8 years after their previous work Aeonian, here is the new album Grand Serpent Rising. After the departure of Galder, their guitarist, the arrival of Damage, real name Michelle Carlsen, Norwegian from Bergen, of the Cult of Destiny, and Gromt has changed things. This album also features a new face on bass, Victor, real name Victor Brandt from Gnarp, Sweden, member of Witchery and Filespawn. Production is handled by Fredrik Nordström, a well-known Swedish producer and sound engineer, owner of Studio Fredman in Gothenburg. Grand Serpent Rising was recorded in various studios, at the Bratislava Studio 2 in Slovakia for the symphonic parts, and the Propeller Studio in Oslo, and finally at Studio Fredman mentioned above. Recording and mixing took a full year, from 2024 to 2025. Still in those words best explain what lies behind this album. Dimmu Borgir is a Leviathan band on a grand scale, and we are rising once again. While the serpent for some represents evil, for us it symbolizes something different: renewal, growth, knowledge and liberation, shedding the skin, so to speak. And let's not forget that February 2026 marks the end of the year of the serpent, roughly the time the album was completed. While Shagrat, the vocalist, stated, "I truly feel we have surpassed ourselves musically on this album. I believe our fans will recognize that and will find something in it that resonates with them." The Metallist. Let us now analyze the following lyrics and arrangements. Tridentium, Ascent, as seen in the unseen. The Cryptfarer, Uvegjeld Blutsodel, I'm sorry about the pronounce, Repository of Divine Transmutation, Slick Minnes, an Alchemist, Phantom of the Nemesis, the Exonerated, Recognizant, at the Precipice of Convergence, Shadows of 1,000 Perceptions, and Gyul. Tridentium. Let's start with the first song. The opening with the violins and cello strongly recalls work from over 20 years ago, and I must say this intro is quite good. Then the guitar begins a truly dark arpeggio, followed by all the instruments, drums, guitar, together with the violins, which is truly exceptional. It is a dark symphony with a foundation in classical music from the greatest composers. You are not merely listening to symphonic black metal, but a true work of art. I will now call upon Claude AI for lyrical analysis. Tridentium is a manifesto text that opens the album by establishing its core philosophy. Darkness is not to be taught, but discovered and experienced firsthand. Man carries within himself an untamable beast that cannot and must not be tamed. Fire, an ambivalent symbol of glory and danger alike, represents the rejection of any clear-cut moralistic worldview. The serpent of the title is not the biblical evil, but a symbol of renewal and liberation, rising as a conscious and sovereign force. In short, direct knowledge, acceptance of one's own nature, no dogma. Score 7 of 10. Ascent, perhaps the finest piece of the entire album, it opens fast with a pounding drum and dissonant guitars typical of pure black metal. Staggered voice, always dark and magnificent. It stays rooted in the sound of albums from the era of Death Cult Armageddon, the famous 2003 record. In my opinion, one of their best. There is a lot of mayhem here, especially in the guitars, a masterpiece. Claude AI, Ascent describes an inner journey toward enlightenment, free of any coordinates of space or time. The central image is the viper spine, the backbone of the serpent, which evokes the Hindu concept of Kundalini, a vital and divine energy that rises through the body toward higher consciousness. A choice is radical. Either one immerses fully in experience or does not live it at all. The destination is paradoxical. True Ascent requires the complete annihilation of the ego, the greater death. In continuity with Tridentum, the message is descend into darkness, dissolve yourself, and only then you can rise. Score 9 of 10. As seen in the unseen, the intro is a very well crafted arpeggio. Arpeggio as a structure is widely used in black metal, and these accompanying dissonant chords are truly incredible. The piano in the background creates a grim and dark atmosphere. Very well done. One of their best songs on this album. Then it shifts and becomes truly pure black metal with Shagrat's demonic vocal delivery making the whole thing exceptional. The orchestra in the background is spine-chilling. This song represents the important union between black metal and classical music. There are many shifts in this track, and I believe that this is their greatest strength. It moves from fast black to a march to metal, all within a single song, a masterpiece. Claude AI, As Seen in the Unseen by Dimmu Borgir is a philosophical, esoteric text that invites the listener to look beyond the apparent reality. The invisible world is a simulation of lies, false smiles, manipulated truths, a pre-written script in which we are trapped. True knowledge hides in the invisible and is accessible only by abandoning mental conditioning. Paradoxically, it is in the dream, not in waking life, that authenticity is touched. To wake up means to forget who one truly is. The way out is not collective, but individual. Revolution begins within oneself, by descending into one's own dark depths in order to find light there. Score 9 of 10. The Cryptopharer, the opening with dissonant chords, is something of a key signature for this album. Dissonance as a winning formula. The semitone scale is truly exceptional. The keyboard in the background and the piano create a mystical atmosphere not heard in a very long time. Listening to this album, I realized how much the songs draw from their work in the early 2000s. This track is not particularly fast, but very symphonic. For Dimmu Borgir, black metal is atmosphere, it is epic, it is recent. Speed is not the goal, but rather the songs are treated almost like lyrical compositions. Claude AI, the Cryptopharer, portrays an occult traveler, a solitary, initiated figure who has already left behind the world of collective illusions. The text revolves around great cosmic oppositions: false light versus hidden truth, movement versus eternity, the herd versus the individual. Embracing darkness is not a defeat, but the passage that leads beyond rational thought into a vast inner space, the sea of the soul. The Cryptopharer does not look back, follows no one, seeks no approval. He moves to the rhythm of his own inner sound, and in that finds eternal origin and absolute direction. Score 7 of 10. This is a Norwegian title, so forgive me for that. Ulvgjeld and Blodsodel. Here the approach is almost horror tense, with spectral sounds, the ticking of a clock marking the passing of seconds and minutes. The guitars and drums introduce a doom metal arrangement before switching into classic metal. Shagrett's spoken delivery midway through gives the track the feel of a recited poem. As if one were watching a scene from a film, the symphonic choir make this track epic and relentless, using the piano at just the right moments without overpowering the guitars and vocals, possibly the most difficult and technically demanding track on the entire album. Klodei, Ulvgjelden Blue Sodel, is the most rooted and personal track. Written in Norwegian, it speaks of ancestral guilt, solitude, and surrender in the face of the inevitable. The world burns, the shepherd abandons the flock, and every individual finds himself alone on their own path. There is no guide, no wise man to fight in your place. Yet even within tyranny and decay something precious hides. The old rust still contains infinite strength. Life appears as a cycle of sacrifice and imitated pain, but whoever truly passes through it with even just an ounce of hope transcends death itself. Score 7 of 10. Repository of Divine Transmutation. The intro recalls Bathory with the classical guitar, lending the track an epic quality. Here there is speed and epic black metal structure. In this track there is a passage that reminds me of Satyricon, of Satyr and Frost, especially in the drum sound. The solos on both electric and classical guitar give the track a melancholic feel, as if something has been lost. It moves from epic to heavy metal, a remarkable transition. Not my favorite track, but I respect the change of style and inspiration, which is important in an album. Klodei. Repository of Divine Transmutation is the most alchemical and inward track. It speaks of transforming pain into strength through a solitary and conscious process. The starting point is total isolation, an unfathomable void that is nonetheless strangely seductive. In a world that pretends to shine, the protagonist does not wait for external salvation. He lights the torch himself. Pain becomes ink, the wound becomes writing, and even the silver lining does not deny the thorn. It passes through it. The whole is framed as a temporary dream from which one will awaken, a lucid detachment, not an escape. True magic is not spectacle. It is the silent and arduous transformation of the soul. Score 6 of 10. And here another Norwegian title, Slick Minnes and Alchemist. The intro is grounded in heavy metal, particularly in the guitar structure and arrangement. Speed is not the priority here. The keyboard accompanies the vocals as a backdrop during the chorus. Shagrett's spoken voice sounds as though it represents a demon or simply a lost soul. Unlike the previous tracks, the arrangement here is simple, nothing overly technical. He steps away from classic black metal and enters classic metal territory with many solos. Klodei. Slick Minnes and Alchemist is the most melancholic and testamentary of the 5 tracks, an aging alchemist looking back and taking stock of what has been. The starting point is a radical identity crisis. The body is a borrowed temple. The self is an illusion. The pendulum swinging marks the entire song. Time opposites, the stasis continually broken by the movement of life. With a clear vision comes a greater obligation, a secret kept outside of time. But the finale is the most dense of all. Nothing is as it appears, yet everything is exactly so. A Zen paradox belonging to one who has truly undergone transformation, and at the moment of death, the smallest secret is forgotten forever. Score 6 of 10. Phantom of the Nemesis. The opening of the track feels like being inside a cave with guitars and violins playing a tense, foreboding melody, as if something evil were drawing near. There are some interesting riffs and arpeggios here. The keyboard accompanying the violins in the background is very well done. Here there is speed, there is black metal as we know it, before becoming symphonic with the orchestra. A fine piece. The guitar structures are very well executed, especially in the arpeggio. This is a very well structured track. Clue the eye. Phantom of the Nemesis by Dimmu Borgir is a philosophical esoteric text in which an all-powerful ego proclaims itself both the creator and destroyer of reality, beyond all morality. The central theme is cosmic dualism, fire cold, light dark, truth lie. Not as a conflict to be resolved, but as a permanent tension that sustains existence. Inner darkness is not negative. It is precisely there that the answer to light is found. The text culminates in a kind of ritual mantra where the enlightened self affirms its capacity to create and destroy, evoking Gnostic concepts and Nietzsche's philosophy of the Übermensch. Score 9 of 10. The exonerated. Here, speed takes over, pure black metal for lovers of musical velocity. No symphony, no orchestra. This is a return to the old school of the 80s and early 90s. The drums shift rhythm frequently to allow greater fluidity in the arrangement. The guitars deliver very well crafted and appreciated riffs and solos. Alongside the black metal, there are rock and heavy metal roots. Shagrat's voice recites a text, briefly making way for the symphonic element, which makes itself heard only toward the end of the track, as if asserting a change. The Exonerated by Dimmu Borgir tells the journey of a sage archetype who, through awareness and courage, reaches full spiritual liberation. The protagonist is a figure outside of time, who confronts a threshold state between death and rebirth and actively overcomes it. A manifest conquest of the chorus is not an external victory, but an inner awakening, reclaiming one's own creation and cognition. Text culminates in the final paradox, he who reaches the beginning knows no end, which synthesizes the entire philosophy of the track. Returning to the origin means stepping outside of time and entering eternity. Compared to Phantom of the Nemesis, this track is less focused on absolute power and more on a liberation earned through the inner journey. Score 7 of 10. Recognizant. The funeral march style opening shifts into a guitar riff that carries all the other instruments along with it. Black metal asserts itself through speed and blast beats. The guitars create dissonant arpeggios that work very well. The keyboard and orchestra backdrop accompany Shagrat's black metal vocals. Many different styles intertwine here, from black to symphonic to power. A choir evokes Nordic atmospheres in the vein of Bathory, but in my opinion it doesn't quite come together in this particular track. Recognizant is the most intimate and mystical of the tracks. It speaks not of power or conquest, but of conscious self-dissolution. The narrator voluntarily steps away from the ordinary path, embraces darkness as a spiritual necessity, and faces a kind of symbolic death. Ashes scattered, the forest, the threshold of the unknown. Confronted with society's accusation, "You are mad, you are not like us," he responds calmly, "I am nothing and everything." The philosophical core is the dissolution of the ego into the absolute, a concept close to Vedanta and Eastern mysticism. Perceived reality is illusion, identification is a deception, and true liberation comes from understanding this. The final paradox, seeing is the blessing of the curse. Sums it all up, awareness is a gift that also carries the burden of no longer being able to ignore the truth. Score 7 of 10. At the precipice of convergence. The intro features a black metal style arpeggio accompanied by the rest of the instruments. The keyboard, ever present in the background, plays a crescendo melody that is very well executed. A return to black metal with dissonant chords and riffs follows, if only briefly. The guitars are carefully studied and very well structured in this song. A piano solo does not overshadow the guitars, a true protagonist of the genre, which then deliver a very well crafted guitar solo. At the precipice of convergence is the natural destination of the philosophical journey mapped out across the other tracks analyzed. The narrator is no longer the agent of his own reality, he is lived by it. Through detachment, surrender, and alchemical transformation, he progressively sheds every remnant of ordinary identity until reaching the final paradox. The abyss is not something one faces, it is what one becomes. The central themes are surrendered as an act of memory, letting go in order to recover something primordial, detachment as a creative force, and total presence in the current moment as a form of lived gnosis. Compared to the other tracks, this is the most cosmic and least personal. The self has dissolved to the point where it can no longer be distinguished from the void. Score 9 of 10. Shadows of 1,000 Perceptions. The intro with keyboard effects transport us into another dimension. The coil creates an epic atmosphere. This track features many effects, not only in the guitars but also in the vocals and keyboard. Their riffs never stray from black metal, with characteristically dissonant passages. A faint hint of progressive metal can also be perceived midway through. The strength of Dimmu Borgir lies precisely in their ability to fuse many genres together, and they have done so very successfully on this latest album. Excellent work! Shadows of 1,000 Perceptions marks a turning point compared to the other tracks. For the first time, the narrator is not alone. He speaks directly to a fellow traveler, someone who has been marginalized for their strength, not their weakness. The heart of the track is the image of the blade sharpened at the very point of the wound, not an escape from pain, but a direct working upon it as a tool of transformation, a shared spiritual surgery. Chaos is not overcome, it is a constitutive condition of both. And the reference to Crowleyan magic suggests a deliberate and conscious practice, not a passive surrender. The finale opens onto something unprecedented in the entire journey, solidarity amongst wanderers. The hunger for transcendence is never exhausted, the legends never end, and the path, however solitary in its essence, is recognized as universally shared. Score 8 of 10. I don't know the pronouns about this, Yul. The instrumental track Yul closes Grand Serpent Rising with the sounds of nocturnal birds and guitars weaving unique arpeggios. The keyboard in the background has no wish to take center stage. His role is one of support. Here I pick up a strong sense of progressive rock, a tribute to Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon? Who knows? All I know is that Dimmu have returned in better shape than ever on this new record. Analyzing the word Yul, it is a term from Norse mythology with the two primary meanings. The river, Yul, is one of the primordial rivers of hell, the realm of the dead. It flows at the boundary between the world of the living and the world of the dead, and is crossed by the bridge Gjallarbrú, guarded by the giantess Morgutru. Hermodr crosses it in the midst in which he seeks to bring Baldur back to life. The horn, Yol, is also the name of Heimdallr's horn. I'm sorry about the pronouns. The guardian god of the Bifrost. It is said that its sound can be heard across all 9 worlds, and it will be blown at the moment of Ragnarok to summon the gods. Etymologically, the word derives from Proto-Germanic and means something along the lines of resonance, roar, or loud sound, linked to the verb yella, to resound, to cry out. It shares the same root as Gjallarhorn, the resounding horn. Score 9 of 10. And that is all for this Dimmu Borgir album. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Please share this video and even the other episodes that I have made. And see you soon, guys.